We're going to talk through some options you might consider when you've saved or come into a large deposit that you want to use to buy your first home. Hello, and welcome to First Home Unlocked, the podcast for unlocking clarity and confidence for first home buyers. I'm Jack Elliott, National First Home Buyer Specialist at Alcove.
And I'm Chris Bates, ex-financial planner and mortgage broker.
Together, we are on a mission to empower you with the keys to unlock your first home. Let's jump in. Hello, welcome back to First Home Unlocked. How are you today, Chris?
Doing well, Jack. Obviously, we're doing this in March, and you know the schemes for first home buyers are out now getting advertised on national TV. I didn't obviously mention that prior to jumping on, but yeah, still a lot of, even though there's a lot of global uncertainty right now, it's good to be doing this episode every week with you just to sort of unpack how things are moving. And I've been well. How are you doing?
Good, thanks, Chris. Upgraded the microphone over the weekend, so this is the first recording with it, so hopefully sounding a lot clearer for everyone out there listening. And like you said, there's a lot to kind of talk about with first home buyers. And today we're going to be talking about, off the back of some recent conversations with first home buyers, we're going to talk through some options you might consider when you've saved or come into a large deposit that you want to use to buy your first home. Now, whether you've been saving for years or a family member has helped you out with a gift or you've come into some money through inheritance, you're in a really strong position. And because you're in a strong position, we want to make sure that you're using it in the right way that sets you up well, not just for this purchase, but for everything that comes after it as well. And Chris, I know over the years you've worked with a lot of first home buyers in this exact situation, so I'm really looking forward to getting into this one today. Now, if you're sitting with a large deposit right now, one of the first questions that usually comes up is, do I put all of my cash in to reduce the loan and lower my repayments, or is there a more strategic way to kind of use it? And that's exactly what we're here to explore today. Now, Chris, when you're talking with a first home buyer who's got a big deposit, where do you usually start?
I mean, this is happening so often now, Jack. And I do think obviously there's a haves and have-nots. And it's, if you're not in this camp, like this episode might not be relevant for you. But if you are in this camp, I think it's really important to really think it through. And there's two ideas. One is I'll just rush and use it all for a deposit and I'll take a smaller loan. And, that can be quite dangerous, because you want to potentially try to build buffers. And the other option is like, do you just only use a little bit for a deposit and then maybe don't take advantage of the options you've got because you could use a bit more and, safely and still have buffers and potentially create, better sort of options for yourself. And so there's a lot that goes on here, and you've just got to be, you're obviously in a fortunate position versus someone with a small deposit, but, you want to really make sure that you use it the right way. And you're really careful of thinking it through and making sure that, you don't potentially be too conservative also, but maybe you don't also be, too optimistic and too aggressive.
Yeah, and I think like you said, Chris, it's about exploring all your options. So like we said, you could put everything you have into the property, and that's going to reduce your loan amount and your repayments, which can be a really attractive option as a first home buyer. But it also means you're left without any buffers. And if something unexpected comes up after settlement or even years down the track, the access to that quick cash is now locked inside of your loan. Maybe you get injured, the hot water system breaks down, your dog needs emergency surgery, or you might be starting a family sooner than you planned. Whatever it is, getting that money back out can take time. And depending on your situation, your income, and your LVR at the time, it might not even be an option. So the question we always start with is, what do you actually need to feel secure after settlement? Now, that looks different for everyone. For some people, it's a lump sum sitting there as a safety net. And for others, it's knowing that they've got a certain number of months worth of expenses covered. Now, there's no right answer. It's whatever helps you sleep at night. And once you've got that number, then you work out what you have left to put into the property. Now, if you keep your emergency fund in your offset account, it's not just sitting there doing nothing. It's actually reducing the interest charge on your loan every single day. So it's working for you, and then it's there when you need it. And it's also not just about the emergency fund. It's also looking ahead to your life plan. So are there big changes that are coming in the next 5+ years? Are you planning to start a family, take time off work? Do you have career changes, etc.? Having money set aside for those moments will help save a lot of stress down the track. Now, Chris, how do you help buyers think through those bigger life moments that might be coming up?
I think it's just asking the questions, right? a lot of people sometimes don't, maybe they're a bit too conservative and they're like, okay, well, what's going to change with work? Are you happy there? What industry are you in? Is it benefit to swap jobs? Are you thinking about it? Are you starting a business? Like, and a lot of people just asking those questions start to think it through and go, oh, and they never thought about it, right? And they go, actually, well, no, I don't think there's going to be any major increases, but I'm pretty secure in my job. Maybe there's going to be a bump in 12 months' time. And then you think about, well, what's from a lifestyle point of view, is there any going to be major shifts? You think about having kids, is there any major change that you're sort of expecting? And just, sometimes people have got a lot of certainty there and go, yeah, probably not much is going to change. And, they don't have to be too conservative, or a lot of people have got, it's quite hazy. Oh, we might be moving overseas, we might be having kids, I'm thinking about starting a business, I'm on the bonus I got last year might not be there next year, or, I'm thinking about going to study. So just having those conversations now, because if you are going to be uncertain, you do want to have bigger buffers just to give you that sort of peace of mind. But yeah, it's just having those conversations.
Yeah, that's right, Chris. And it's understanding that we're all different. Everyone's on a different journey. Every first home buyer we speak with has a different plan and different things that are coming up in their life. So it's getting that buffer sorted. That's why we're talking about it today. It's so important. And then once you do have your buffer sorted, the next conversation is really around the property itself. So a lot of first home buyers are buying with what we call a stepping stone mindset, which is where you buy a property that serves you now and into the future, you build some equity, and then you upgrade into your forever home. But when you've got a strong deposit, you might be able to skip the stepping stone altogether and go straight to a property you can genuinely grow into. Now, Chris, do you think it's worth looking beyond the stepping stone property if you have that bigger deposit?
Oh, absolutely. This is one of the big advantages. And it's for a few reasons. You might have thought I had to look at an apartment, but maybe I could get a more of a rundown house. Obviously something that's not going to be a money pit that you got to keep sinking money into, but maybe it's a solid house that, isn't ideal from a renovation point of view. It's maybe got an old kitchen and bathroom, but it's a really solid house that could be renovated quite easy in the future. And, maybe you deal with a little bit of short-term lifestyle pain in terms of it's, not fresh and new, but you can tidy things up with doing a lot of things with just some paint, to be honest. But, it does create that option for you. And then, your life plan does change, maybe the kids come along, maybe you get a bit older and, you can then renovate the place. Whereas a lot of people have potentially bought something a bit small because their budgets only allowed them, their only option is to sort of sell that property. And the challenge is whether you paid stamp duty or not is a huge issue. You got to pay agents. And often the big thing that a lot of first home buyers get burnt on here is the property they want to upgrade into grows at a faster rate than what they purchased. So they still have, built wealth, but once you take away all the costs to buy and sell and that money's gone up, maybe their 200's gone to 400, but, the property they want have moved has gone from 1.3 to 1.6 and they haven't really, got ahead, because of that. And I think if you can avoid any type of transacting in properties and buy a property that gives you a much longer runway, it's a much better decision. And it's one of the advantages people with big deposits have is potentially they can miss that step altogether.
Yeah, and I think that's really key, Chris, is you've got the options with that larger deposit set. And it's also really important to focus on choosing that high quality asset for your first home, because the quality of what you buy gives you the best chance of building that equity. And that equity is what opens up your options in the future. Now, Chris, someone with a large deposit who has access to a wider range of properties, how important is it to stay focused on asset quality?
Yeah, I mean, you've got a big advantage, right? So now it's a case of, can that allow you to make a better decision than someone, I guess, if you had a smaller deposit and budget was really tight, and then you might say, well, yeah, I can look at this apartment market, for example, but I don't have to, for example, just buy someone at the, that maybe has got a few compromises. I might feel like that would be okay for me. But if I spend an extra 100,000, for example, on it, it might mean that I can get a top floor with a view, the best one in the block, the bigger apartment, the better aspect, one with parking. And so you might feel like you want to spend a little bit less because you go, that's all I need to spend. But because you've got this bigger deposit, it just gives you this option of getting a better quality asset. And, when you go and sell it one day, that gap was say, 100,000 now, but now that gap's like 150, 200, you're better protected if you're selling in not a great market. And so, yeah, I do think and a lot of first home buyers are competing in similar pockets and they've all got similar budgets. And so what you find is that one who's got a little bit more can just potentially get a lot better value for money. There's a little bit of a sweet spot for the one who's got a little bit more cash. And so you might be the one that, you go to the open home and it's just a few less people there. You go to the auction, there's a few less people there. And you just compare like for like, and you go, yeah, I've spent a little bit more than I wanted to, but I got a much better asset for it. And so I think it's just, focusing on not what you need, or not what you potentially even just want. It's like actually what's going to be a good investment decision here, because, and you might feel like you don't need it or you don't want to spend that because it's just like, it feels like a little bit extravagant. So you might be putting this self-limited belief on it, but you go, well, no, I'm going to stretch here. I'm going to spend a bit more money because I know it's going to be something I'm going to sell one day and it's going to be a better investment decision.
Yeah, and I think that comes back to what we've talked about in past episodes, is knowing your budget really well, knowing what repayments you can handle, and working with your trusted professional, with your broker, to work out what's best for your situation if you're looking to stretch that little bit to get that better quality asset. But just because a property is more expensive doesn't always mean that it's going to perform well. The fundamentals are still the same regardless of your price point. So you've got supply and demand, your street position, your land size, the type of property, and then who it's going to appeal to when you sell it one day. Now, we covered asset quality back in episode 6, and it's well worth going back and having a listen if you haven't already. And we'll link it in the show notes for you. And then this leads us to our trusted professionals you can bring in to help buy your first home, especially when you're starting with that bigger deposit. Now, the first one is a trusted buyer's agent. Now, Chris, can you explain what a buyer's agent is and the value they bring to a first home buyer?
Yeah, I think this is an episode that we probably should do in a lot of detail around the value of buyer's agents. We haven't done too much on it yet, just because a lot of first home buyers, cash is tight. Like, they've worked so hard to save this money. You got to pay all the costs to buy, and often you got to pay stamp duty. And even if you only need a 5% deposit, they still haven't got much money left over. But there are an element of, people who have got a bit of extra cash. And, while buyer's agents aren't a cheap service, it's not $5,000. There are a lot of advantages for using great ones. And, particularly if you're, the first property is the most important one. It's why I love helping first home buyers the most. I feel like it's the one that really sets them up the most. But, if you can go and use a buyer's agent, you've got the ability to use it. If you select a really good one, there are a lot of value adds to those. They've got great relationships with agents. They're more likely to get you access. That, stop you buying a property that you just don't know what you don't know. And, can help you negotiate, value the property, DD. There's just a long, long list, which I think we'll do an episode on. But yeah, it's one of the opportunities people with a bit of cash can do. And you might think, oh, is it, I've got gifted this money. Am I wasting money on a buyer's agent? Well, yes, sometimes if you're potentially buying someone who's a bit inexperienced and you're their guinea pig, but if you're using someone who's been around for a while, really knows, and is willing to help you as a first-time buyer, knows that market you're buying in, it can be a huge advantage versus someone who can't afford a buyer's agent.
Yeah, and they take a lot of that emotional stress over buying your first home. It's very emotional. It's the first time you're doing something. To have that trusted professional, if you can, in your corner is a really great way to kind of make that first home journey a lot smoother. Now, Chris, you touched on a couple of things, but so does making a great buyer's agent, what does that actually look like, and what should first home buyers watch out for?
It's really what you're buying is you're getting a service, you're paying you can pay a percentage. Sometimes they do that, but I'm not hung up on whether they're a fixed fee or a percentage. Regardless, if you wanted a fixed fee, you could just negotiate that, right? So for a fee, you engage them. They're working for you. They're not working for anyone else. And you're saying to them, can you help me sort of find, negotiate, secure, the right property for my needs? And so a great buyer's agent usually has at least 5 years. I would say even closer to 10 years experience. And often they have that in the market that you want to buy, rather than they've just started buying in this area, like they're an investment specialist, etc. So you want someone who just has that deep knowledge. Ideally, they grew up in that area. They know all the streets. They know how the place has changed over time. They've been through multiple market cycles. They've got great relationships with the agents. And so those buyer's agents can really help challenge you on your brief. Look, what you're thinking is great, but here's an alternative option, and you might not even have thought of that. They might push you to, consider other suburbs or different types of property, or stop you moving down the whole other wrong direction if you're heading down a poor asset. Once they get the brief right, and is it achievable? Like, are you looking for a needle in the haystack, or is this strategy that you're trying to, pull off, is it highly likely you can achieve it? But how do you minimize the risk of that not working? What other suburbs do you look at? And, because time can cost you money as well. And so then once you're aligned on your strategy, they're off looking for that. And, through their relationships with great agents, they're putting that brief out and saying, hey, we've got an active buyer looking for this. And if you do have that, potentially either pre-market or off-market, they might even be able to get you access to it. Or if it is on the market, they know the ones to really, get excited about and the ones that you need to just walk away from, things that you just wouldn't even know. But if it is a really good asset, they can then also help you understand what's market value, what's comparing different properties that are sold, giving you real confidence around, how that agent wants to work and negotiate. It's not as easy as just saying, well, add 10% to that and that's what it's worth. It's way deeper. Then you've got relationships with all the builders and conveyancers and all the people you sometimes need to assess if this is a rabbit worth chasing, basically, and will then guide you through that process. And like you say, Jack, it's extremely confusing and emotional, the whole buying journey. Finance is part of it, but the actual securing the assets, obviously the hard bit, and then it potentially, if it goes to auction, you don't even need to do your own bidding. They'll do the bidding for you and take that stress away, which can be huge. So a lot of value in the really good ones. And, the new to industry ones, I don't think the value is anywhere near as big, but so you just got to be careful. And that's why we work with, real local specialists across the country that are super experienced.
Yeah. And like you said, Chris, we definitely will do a deep dive into buyer's agents. We're looking to get some buyer's agents on as guests as well to bring that to you as the listener to understand how they work, pick their brain for everything that they do day in and day out as well. And if you'd like us to refer you a quality buyer's agent in your area, you can just reach out and we can point you in the right direction. And also, if you want to learn more right now about how buyer's agents work, Chris hosts another podcast called Street Secrets, where he's interviewing some of the top buyer's agents from around Australia. So it's a great listen, and we'll link that one in the show notes for you. Now, another professional worth considering is a financial planner. Now, a financial planner will help get clear on your overall wealth and lifestyle goals, and then help you build a plan to get there. But one of the most important things they'll help you with, especially at this stage, is making sure that you're protected. Because when you take on a mortgage for the first time, it's worth asking yourself some important questions. What happens if your income stops? What if you get injured and can't work? How would you keep up with your repayments? And if the worst was to happen, would your partner be able to manage on their own? Now, these are the kinds of things a financial planner helps you think through and put the right cover in place for. So a planner looks at the bigger picture, your cash flow, your insurances, your super, and the other ways to build wealth over time. And for someone in a position with a large deposit, that kind of guidance can really help make sure you're setting yourself up in the best possible way. Now, Chris, you were a financial planner before becoming a broker. Do you think it's worth investing in a financial planner before you buy your first home?
Look, it's a tricky one, this. I'm very pro advice, because I do think great planners, like any, service, particularly in this space, can really give you a lot of confidence and clarity. And there are challenges with property and financial advisors. They do sometimes struggle really knowing it because it's not where they've put all their energy and time into it. Where we've focused 100% on this. I do think it's good because they can look at your broader picture. Whether that's related to your property decision is different. They can make sure your super and insurances are all set up and, you've got a sort of understanding of your cash flow and how you're going to pay your mortgage off and, give you that confidence there. But around the property decision, there are sort of limitations there as well. So, particularly around insurance, absolutely. And getting sort of your will set up and everything like that, estate planning. But around property, you just got to be careful. Like often, sometimes if you go there for property specific advice around your property decisions, there are challenges for them to do that. And all of a sudden you could be paying an advice fee. They might want to, send you down the wrong road and you can lose a lot of time depending on who you talk to. But some of the great planners out there actually understand why property is a really good decision for a lot of people, tax-free asset, blah, 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 blah. And so they can give you a lot of confidence that, you can afford this and it's a good decision for you. And I'll sort out all the rest. You can just focus on making this property decision right.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, Chris, it's really a really key important part, especially for a first home buyer, is getting them insurances in place. If something was to happen, financial planner can definitely help with that and look at your kind of whole position. And then, yeah, as you said, be careful about who you're talking to around the property plan. And then from there, we can work as a team all together to kind of get you in the best position possible for buying your first home. So then when you've got that significant amount of money saved or received, there can be this pressure to act quickly as well. You've been waiting to get to this point and now you just want to move. Taking the time to be strategic, building on the right team, getting clear on what you actually want, and finding a property that genuinely fits your life. That's what protects the position you're in and sets you up for the future. Now, Chris, before we wrap up, do you have any final tips for first home buyers with a large deposit?
Look, if you have got a large deposit, you've got a huge advantage than if you didn't have that. And, I guess it's just being a little bit really strategic on how you use that. It's potentially not putting it all in, keeping a deposit, but it's just being a little bit more open to how should you go about it. Making sure you still keep buffers. It should almost take a lot of stress away. So I think there's a danger of sort of you miss the opportunity around just comfort and peace of mind. I mean, we didn't even speak about it today, but a lot of people, the first home buyers can't even look at properties that need a renovation. And that's a big advantage for people with big deposits is they can go, well, I'll buy something a bit cheaper that needs a bit of work and I've got money to go and spend $100,000 on renovating it and, adding some value to it. And that could be something a lot of first home buyers don't even look at. And so, yeah, it's just having a look at your options and going, yeah, if I play this a bit smarter, I can get a much better result and not just feel a bit more peace of mind because I've, got a big deposit in my offset account, but I've actually got to make a much better property decision because I had the ability to do so.
Yeah, perfect, Chris. And yeah, you're right about them renovations. It's good to kind of be able to use that to your advantage. And that's that whole episode that we've talked about today is using this big deposit to your advantage, exploring all your options, and then choosing what fits your situation the best. Now, if you are at this point and you're ready to get started, you can book a get to know you chat through the links in the show notes. So thank you so much for listening today. And thanks again, Chris. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks so much, Jack.
Thank you so much for listening. We'd really appreciate if you could do us a huge favor. Share this episode with any first home buyers that you know so we can help more people like you feel clear, calm and confident when purchasing their first property. You can join our Facebook group, First Home Unlocked, to continue the conversation with other first home buyers. Or if you're ready to unlock your first home, you can book a get to know you chat by using the link in the show notes or by going to firsthomeunlocked.com.au. Before we go, just a reminder that everything we share on this podcast is general in nature and not tailored to your personal situation. We always recommend seeking advice from a qualified and experienced professional when making financial decisions.